So, why is the West angry with Namibian President for joining Traore Ibrahim to deepen ties with North Korea? The West is reportedly angry with the Namibian President for deepening ties with North Korea alongside Ibrahim Traore due to a confluence of factors rooted in the geopolitical interest, historical perspective, and established international norms. Here's a breakdown of key reasons. First, North Korea's status as a pariah state. Sanctions and nuclear programs. North Korea is one of the most heavily sanctioned nations globally due to its persistent pursuit of nuclear weapon and ballistic missile programs in defense of UN resolution. The West, particularly the United States, has spearheaded the sanctions to pressure Pyongyang to denuclearize. So any nation openly aligning with North Korea is seen as undermining these international efforts and potentially providing a lifeline to the regime. Secondly, they talk about human rights concern. The West consistently raises serious concerns about the dire human rights situation in North Korea, characterized by totalitarian rule, lack of freedom, and severe repression. Engaging with the North Korean regime is often interpreted as a tacit endorsement of disregard for these human rights abuses. Thirdly, security threat. North Korea's unpredictable behavior and its development of weapons of mass destruction are viewed as a significant threat to regional and international security by the West. Any strengthening of ties with Pyongyang is seen as potentially increasing this threat. The second reason is defiance of Western influence and norms. Challenging the established order, the West, having historically had significant political and economic influence over many African nations, often views independent foreign policies decisions that deviate from its own as a challenge to its authority and the existing international order. Namibia, by openly aligning with a state the West vehemently opposes, is seen as stepping out of line. Rejection of Western condemnation. The Namibian president's open embrace of North Korea directly contradicts the West's strong condemnation of the country. This public defiance is perceived as a rejection of Western values and foreign policy's objectives. Solidarity with a perceived adversary. Ibrahim Traore, like other leaders who have distanced themselves from traditional Western partners, is viewed with suspicion and outright hostility by some in the West. Namibia joining Traore in deepening ties with North Korea is seen as a double affront, aligning with both a sanctioned state and a leader who is perceived as anti-Western. Thirdly, historical context and Cold War echoes. Past alignment. This highlights our historical support North Korea offered Namibia's liberation movement SWAPO during the apartheid era. While Namibia views this as a debt of gratitude and a bond forged in struggle, the West, with its own Cold War history and alliances, may view this as continued alignment with suspicion, particularly given North Korea's current global standing. Ideological differences. The West generally promotes democratic governance and free market economies. North Korea's totalitarian system and state-controlled economy are fundamentally opposed to these values. Namibia's deepening ties can be interpreted as a leaning away from Western ideological norms. Fear of setting a precedent. Encouraging other nations, the West worries that Namibia's bold move could embolden other African nations or developing countries to forge closer ties with states considered as adversaries, further undermining the West's global influence and the effectiveness of its sanction regimes. In essence, the West's anger stems from a perception that Namibia is first legitimizing our dangerous and isolated regime, secondly undermining efforts to denuclearize North Korea, thirdly disregarding human rights concerns, fourth defying Western influences and established norms, and finally fifth potentially encouraging a shift in alliance among other nations. The West's disapproval of Namibia's deepening ties with North Korea alongside figures like Ibrahim Traore is portrayed not as a principled stance but as an act of unwarranted interference driven by a sense of entitlement and a desire to maintain control over African nations. Namibia, like any sovereign state, has the right to determine its own foreign policy and choose allies based on its unique history and national interests, free from external dictates. This bold move is presented not as a defiance but as a form of leadership that prioritizes African sovereignty and self-determination, a path that other African nations may find inspiring in the face of continued Western influence.